The doctor's words hit Claire like a physical blow. Cancer. Her son Ethan, her vibrant, athletic Ethan, had cancer. The room spun, the sterile scent of the hospital suddenly suffocating. Ethan, her baby, her whole world was facing a death sentence. Claire clung to hope. She researched tirelessly, scouring the internet for trials, for new treatments, for anything that could offer a chance. Ethan, ever the pragmatist, tried to comfort her. He told her he wasn't afraid, but she saw the fear in his eyes, the fear he tried so hard to conceal. Days blurred into weeks. Ethan started chemo, his once strong body withering under the assault of the toxic chemicals. He lost his hair, his appetite, his energy. Claire watched helplessly, her heart breaking a little more each day. Then, a glimmer of hope appeared. A new experimental treatment, a chance. Dr. Lewis, a pioneer in cellular regeneration, spoke with quiet confidence. The treatment was radical, reversing the aging process at a cellular level. It was untested, risky, but it could potentially eradicate the cancer by returning Ethan's cells to a pre-cancerous state. Claire listened, hope warring with fear. Ethan was wary. He understood the risks, the unknowns, but the alternative was unthinkable. He had to fight, for his mom, for himself. The decision was agonizing. The potential side effects were daunting, the long-term consequences unknown. But faced with the prospect of losing Ethan, Claire knew she had to take the risk. The treatment was grueling. Ethan endured countless injections, transfusions, and scans. His body, ravaged by both the cancer and the treatment, grew weaker. But through it all, Claire was there, a constant presence at his side, her love a beacon in the darkness. The day Ethan regressed to infancy, Claire wasn't prepared. She had steeled herself for the physical changes, the shrinking stature, the loss of hair, but nothing prepared her for the sight of her teenage son, his mind trapped in the body of a baby, staring up at her with a mixture of fear and confusion in his eyes. Ethan's vocabulary was reduced to babbles and cries. His once strong limbs were now soft and uncoordinated. He was, for all intents and purposes, a baby. Yet behind those wide, innocent eyes, Claire saw flickers of the young man he had been. The frustration, the fear, the longing to communicate, it was all there, locked inside a body that could no longer express it. The doctors assured Claire it was temporary. As his body healed, his mind would catch up. But for now, her son, her teenage son, was a baby, needing constant care and attention. The weight of caring for an infant while holding down a full-time job proved overwhelming. Sleep-deprived and emotionally drained, Claire made the difficult decision to hire a babysitter. She needed help, someone to care for Ethan while she was at work. Ethan, however, had other ideas. He expressed his displeasure with ear-splitting screams and inconsolable crying fits. He refused bottles, rejected toys, and clung to Claire with a desperation that tore at her heart. He may have been a baby physically, but his mind, his memories, his emotions were all those of a teenager. Claire tried different babysitters, experienced nannies, and even daycare. Nothing worked. Ethan's tantrums escalated, his frustration growing with each passing day. He was trapped, unable to communicate his needs, his fears, his anger. Just when Claire was at her wit's end, a solution presented itself, albeit an unconventional one. Absolutely not. Ethan's voice, high-pitched and frantic, echoed in Claire's mind. It was absurd, unthinkable, and yet here they were, facing the unthinkable. Ethan's regression had brought a unique set of challenges, not least of which was finding a babysitter he would tolerate. He'd rejected every candidate with a decisiveness that bordered on the comical, if it weren't so heart-wrenching. "Ethan, honey, please," Claire pleaded silently, her heart aching for his distress. Just give her a chance. Of course, her pleas were futile. Ethan, in his current state, could no more articulate his reasons than he could fly. But his fury was palpable, radiating off him in waves of pure primal rage. He'd scream until he was hoarse, his tiny face contorted with effort. He'd refused to eat, his little body going rigid with defiance. He was waging a war against a situation he couldn't control, and the only weapon he had was his absolute refusal to cooperate. The solution, as it turned out, came in the form of Sarah, Ethan's ex-girlfriend. Claire had always liked Sarah, had admired her patience and compassion. Now, she was their last hope. Sarah's initial reaction was a mixture of shock and disbelief. Holding baby Ethan in her arms, his familiar blue eyes staring up at her with an unnerving intensity, she felt a wave of sympathy wash over her. To her surprise, Ethan didn't throw a tantrum. He didn't cry or scream. He simply stared at Sarah, his blue eyes holding hers with a gaze that was both unnerving and strangely familiar. He recognized her, remembered her. The situation was surreal, absurd even. Yet, beneath the absurdity, there was a current of something else, a shared history, a bond that transcended age and circumstance. The arrangement, while unorthodox, seemed to work. Ethan was calmer, more content in Sarah's care. There was a connection between them, an unspoken understanding. Still, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that she was crossing lines, blurring boundaries. Sarah wasn't just a babysitter. She was Ethan's ex-girlfriend. The situation raised ethical questions, questions that gnawed at Claire's conscience. What were the long-term implications of this? How would Ethan feel when he regained his teenage body, when he remembered this period of his life, his vulnerability, his dependence on Sarah? And what about Sarah? She would be a mature woman in another decade. How long would she be willing to put her life on hold to care for her ex-boyfriend, who was now a baby? The weight of the situation pressed down on them all. Claire was caught between relief and guilt, her days a blur of work and worry. Ethan remained trapped in his infantile state, his frustration growing, his eyes reflecting a depth of understanding that belied his physical form. And Sarah, she was a rock, patient, loving, and unwavering in her care for Ethan. But Claire saw the toll it was taking on her, the sacrifices she was making, the questions swirling in her own eyes. Their once simple lives had become a tangled web of emotions and moral dilemmas. The future stretched before them, uncertain and daunting. The experimental treatment had saved Ethan's life, but at what cost? The questions were endless, the answers elusive. They were a family adrift, clinging to hope, navigating uncharted waters. As weeks turned into months, a strange new normalcy settled over their lives. Ethan, still a baby physically, was showing signs of real development. He was starting to be more independent now. His eyes, always so expressive, held a glimmer of mischief, a spark of the teenager he once was. Sarah remained a constant presence, her bond with Ethan deepening with each passing day. She read him stories, sang him songs, and patiently encouraged his every developmental milestone. Claire watched them, her heart a mixture of gratitude and apprehension. She was grateful for Sarah, for her unwavering love and support. But she couldn't escape the nagging feeling that this situation, this fragile equilibrium, couldn't last forever. What would happen when Ethan regained his teenage body once more? How would their relationships be redefined? The future was a blank canvas, filled with equal parts hope and uncertainty. For now, though, they would focus on the present, on cherishing the moments, on navigating the uncharted waters of their new reality, together.